welcome to the Anthony and Steve Show. I'm your host, Anthony Mattioli. I am recently retired and spent the last 35 years in the financial services arena. Today, we're going to start a series of episodes about different leadership styles. With me is Steve Mattioli. Steve just wrote a book called Your Finest Hour. Steve, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Thanks, Anth. Good to have you, and welcome everybody to our new podcast. In this first couple series of podcasts, going to be on leadership. You're in for a real good couple of shows, and just a little bit about my background is I also am retired. I served 35 years in the U.S. government, most of that time in leadership positions. And I wrote a book on the lessons I learned, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Prior to the U.S. government, I was in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves, where I learned further lessons on leadership that we're also going to talk.
Semper Fi, Steve.
Semper Fi, that's right.
Semper Fi.
Always
Don't forget
that means always faithful. That's right. That's the Marine Corps motto. So Semper Fi, we're going to talk about those, and we got a lot of good chapters in the book to talk about. So yeah, it's going to be a good show, and we're going to learn a lot together about leadership, not only from my perspective in the book, but also my Anthony's perspective in banking and in his leadership. So yeah, Anthony, it should be a good time.
Steve, I'm excited to get this off the ground. I really am. I think there's a lot of great information that can help anybody who's listening out there. So, you know what? Let's jump right in here, Steve. I know you talked briefly about some of your qualifications, but let's dig a little deeper into this. Tell me why you actually wrote the book, or what gave you the inspiration to get this thing started.
Yeah, and that's a great question, because every leader has to start somewhere, and there's not a lot of good books on leadership that cover all the topics. There's books on communication, there's books on employee this or employee that, but they're kind of spread out. And some of it, as many people know, if you're in a leadership position, you don't get a lot of training. You don't get a manual that comes with it. You get thrown into the fire. So as I went through these situations in my life, I started writing them down, and kind of like passing them along to people that would come after me. But I think the turning point for my writing this book and focusing on leadership occurred about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 8. I was sent to Washington, D.C. I was a division administrator of the California division, which is the second largest in my agency. And I was sent to Washington. We had a lot of employee issues on the border. These are inspectors that serve on the Mexican border. I was in an agency that inspected trucks and buses. We were kind of like what the FAA is to the airlines. We were to the truck and bus industry. And anyway, there was a lot of employee issues along the border. I was a border state. And they asked me to look into some employee issues, morale, pay, and some other things. And I spent a month up in headquarters looking into this. And as I did, I just really came to life about leadership issues. And I saw so many things that had to do more with leadership than anything else. And it really spurred me on to think about, how could I help these supervisors at the border learn how to manage people better, learn how to work with them better, learn how to improve morale, learn how to get better results. And it all started coming into focus. And I left Washington in my mind that I was going to start documenting all the things that I'd been through that a leader would need to know to improve things. So that kind of started where I wanted to go forward into teaching people about leadership. That's where the book came from.
Steve, what I like about the book is throughout the book, it's not just an encyclopedia of leadership terms. It's you have a lot of different examples in the book that are real life examples that happen every day in corporate America or if it's in the military, or it could be in your relationships that you share with others. And the greatest thing about them, you talk about your failures too. And I think readers or listeners are can really resonate with that. And so tell me, with that being said, what do you feel makes your book different than the average leadership book?
Well, a couple things, Anth. The first thing is that this book is not about theory. This book is boots on the ground lessons in leadership. Everything I talk about in the book, I've done. I've had to fire people. I've had dangerous situations. I've had to improve myself. I've had to learn not to be anchored. Uh, all these lessons were learned by me firsthand with real employees and real life situations. So there's not a lot of theory in the book. It's based on real life leadership examples and learning how to get results and learning how to work with people and learning how to improve yourself. And so when I wrote the book, I tried to make it a kind of a manual where you could read this book and really get a good feel of where a leader needs to start. And like I said, there's a lot of books out there, but there's not a lot of books that really take you from start to finish. And I tried to really give somebody a good start on leadership. Or if they're in leadership, I tried to give them some good help on various issues. So, for example, the first part of the book deals with improving yourself. We always like to look at others. We always like to find fault with others, but you got to turn the mirror inward first and fix this first before you can fix other people. So the first few chapters, 7 or 8 chapters, start with fixing yourself. Then it goes into how to get results. Then it goes into how to deal with employee situations, firing, corrective feedback. And then we go into how to improve employee morale. And, employee morale, you rarely see this talked about. I learned this in the military. When morale is low, bad things happen. And people don't take morale, but morale is really important in an organization, especially when you're leading employees. So I go into a few chapters. How do you improve employee morale? How do you get employee loyalty, which is so important long-term to a leader? And then the last chapters deal with higher wisdom type stuff, not being anchored. How many people should you have in your chain of command? So I tried to make the book really all-encompassing for a leader to get started, and if you're in a leadership position, to find places where maybe you could improve a little bit.
Steve, let's face it. Today, there's that chair. It's no easy task being the top kahuna, no matter what you do. But through your book, and we'll get to this in some other episodes. But I just want you to touch on a term that we don't hear a lot of, but I think we're hearing a lot more of it: servant leadership. And tell us what that means to you, and tell us how important that is for somebody who wants to, begin or start a career in a management, or corporate position where they have people reporting to them.
Yeah, it's a great question, Anth. And this was a lesson that I learned when I served in the Marine Corps. And that, the biggest difference, if you've been in the military, the biggest difference I saw between the military and the civilian side was, in the military, you cared about those that you led. I was a rifle
Good point.
I was a rifle squad leader. I had a number of leadership positions, but I was a rifle squad leader later in my career in the Marine Corps. And you were responsible for those people. You were responsible to make sure they didn't get lost. You were responsible to make sure they had water and food, make sure they weren't injured. You took care of those you led, and you led with a servant's leadership. I was the last to go to bed. I was the first up in the morning. That's the kind of attitude you had to have, and that's the kind of attitude I brought with me when I worked for the government. You got to care for the people that work with you, and that when they sense that you care for them, they're going to work harder for you. They're going to do more for you. And I really believe that we're missing this sometimes, is servant leadership. And a big part of servant leadership is setting the example. I can't ask my people to be on time if I'm not on time. I can't ask them to not go over their lunchtime if I'm continually going over my lunchtime. So it's more than just a servant. It's just setting the example that people will follow. And that's what a true leader is. And you're going to see that sprinkled throughout this book about servant leadership and how When you're out front, you have to set the example.
It all starts at the top, Steve.
Exactly.
The leader sets the culture, right, for the whole organization.
Exactly.
And we lose fact that in any organization, people are your greatest asset. And there always has to be somebody who sets the tone or shows them the blueprint. And again, you want to see them go on to be successful. So you're not only doing it to help the organization, you're looking down the road where these people who are learning from how you conduct yourself, they're going to be leaders someday, and they're going to lead a group of people, and hopefully they learn a few things from your tutelage. Hey, hats off to veterans, Steve. They never get the credit, for what the skills that they have in the military. But I don't know if you can find a better training ground. It seemed to jumpstart you, Steve, and give you the inspiration and the know-how and the confidence to go out and increase or better yourself to become the best you could be and move the government forward. So I have all due respect for these veterans who go out there, not only lead, but they put their lives on the line. And I didn't want to let that get lost in the shuffle. One other topic I want to let the readers know that you're going to cover in the book, and we're not there yet, but talk about this millennial attitude nowadays and how that differences from the baby boomers. And we always say treat people the same way. In your book, I think you have some references to the differences between who you're leading. So if you can just expand on that a little bit, I think that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I learned was that not everybody is the same, and there's definitely generational differences. I supervised people that were older than me, and I supervised people that were much younger than me, and I could see the difference. And it's not something I'm not saying this is a negative, but this is something that's reality. The people that were older than me were like the World War II generation, right? They were born in the 50s, and these type of people, you could just tell them what to do. They didn't need feedback. They just went and did it. That was just the newer folks, the younger folks. They were different. They wanted explanations. They wanted more talking. They wanted more feedback on how they were doing. The older folks didn't. They just went out and did it. So it wasn't a negative between anybody, but it's something as a leader you have to realize you have different groups of people that work with you. And I'll give you a classic example, Anth, is communication. The younger generation wants to communicate via email and text. They don't want to call, and they don't want to talk to you face.
True.
They don't want to talk to you face to face a lot of times. And
you can't get a hold of anybody on the phone, can
exactly.
you, Steve?
And you have to teach them and make them understand that there are times when you have to meet people face to face. You have to pick up the phone. And this is covered in my book on the chapter on communication. Can you hear me now? Where I cover this and how you use each type of communication to your advantage. But the different generations want to use the different tools differently. And so as a leader, how do you work with that? And so there's some really good
Steve,
stuff in there about communication and leading different generations.
Yes. Steve, I can relate to that because I know that when my phone rings and it's one of my kids, usually that's going to cost me some money. That's when I get worried. So I'd rather have them text me if they can, but when those phone calls come in, I know my pocket's
it's serious when they're calling you.
Lighter.
Yeah.
You do, for sure. Well, hey, this has been some good information. Why don't you let our viewers know if they want to get a copy of the book or more information, where can they begin?
Well, the book is on Amazon. The book is called Your Finest Hour: Lessons in Leadership by Steve Mattioli. I'll put a little image up so people can see it. And I also put a link down below where you can just click on the link and it'll take you to Amazon. There's the Kindle version. There's also a print version. And so I hope as we go through this book that you'll see the value in it. And for the price of the book, and there's 28 chapters, and you're going to learn something. I guarantee it. There's one of these chapters in this book where you need to read, and it's going to make a big difference in your leadership position. But one other thing I want to cover as we're introducing this series one of the things the military taught, especially the Marine Corps, and I think this is really key, the Marine Corps taught you that you are a leader right where you're at. You know, people always think, well, I can't be a leader. I don't have people underneath me.
Right.
I don't have 100 employees. You know what? You're a leader right where you're at. Be a leader right where you're at. That's where a leader starts. When you don't have anybody underneath you, it doesn't matter. You lead in your duties. You be a leader. You take the initiative. That's where a leader starts. You be a leader right where you're at. And I've seen so many great examples of leadership in my career. But one of the let me give you, leadership makes the difference in everything. It makes the difference in everything. Let me give you one example. I was on a flight for American Airlines. You show up there to check your bags in. It's supposed to be easy, right? I'm about an hour before the flight. Should have plenty of time, and it's absolute chaos at the American check-in counter. There's people standing around. There's long lines. People are starting to yell, getting angry that the baggage isn't being checked in. And there's two clerks behind the counter, and they look like I talked about morale. They look depressed. They look their heads are down. They're not doing anything. People are yelling at them. And I'm way back. I'm wondering if I'm going to get my flight. And I'm like, this is total chaos. And the employees they're just lost. Here comes a young woman out of the back, another employee. She was obviously a supervisor. She assesses the situation in like 30 seconds, right? And then she says, okay, everyone with the bags, stand over there. Everyone checking in, stand over here. I'm going to get your tags. I'm going to do that. And within 5 minutes, she had that line moving. She had people going to the gate, and she had things working so well. All it took was a smidgen of a leader coming in and fixing the situation. And that so impressed me. I actually wrote a letter to American Airlines. I did get her name, telling them what a wonderful employee they had and what a great job she did. That's what a leader is. That's what we're talking about here. Any situation you want to do, customer service, employees, be a leader. And that's what we're going to talk about through this series. You're going to see, be a leader. Take the initiative, solve problems, and make good things happen.
Steve, a leader is definitely a difference maker, and I really enjoyed that story. Steve, thanks for being here again today. My name's Anthony Mattioli, and I can't wait to get together next time as we begin diving into Chapter 1.
Yes, so you don't want to miss that. We're going to go through Chapter 1, and we have 28 chapters that we're going to cover, and you are not going to want to miss that, because actually Chapter 1 is where, and I'm sure, Anthony, you'll agree, it's where all leadership starts.
Amen, brother.
It's where it all starts, and it's not with others. It's looking in the mirror, and you're gonna be surprised what we're gonna cover on that one. So yeah, join us next time. I'm Steve Mattioli, and
I'm Anthony Mattioli.
Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you on our next podcast. Take care.